What is up, guys? Rick Hackus here, and today we are going over the details of a bunch of new Titanfall 2 pilot weapons. Now, recently myself and a few other YouTubers were invited out to Respawn Entertainment Studios in order to play the Titanfall 2 multiplayer beta early and capture gameplay. Now, I made sure to capture gameplay of all of the pilot weapons available in the build we played. Now, the pilot weapons in Titanfall 2 is actually one of the huge advancements, I think, over Titanfall 1. Although you had a very futuristic setting in the original Titanfall game, you had yourself dropping from drop pods, from spaceships up above, and you had the whole Titan thing and all of that stuff. You had weapons that were very similar, in the case of the pilot weapons, to just modern military guns shooting bullets, and they wouldn't be that out of place in a modern Call of Duty game, to be honest. But Titanfall 2 has really stepped its game up, and now you have these crazy laser weapons and the like, all of which we're going over today. So let's get started with the returning classics. Now first we have the R201 Carbine. If you played the original Titanfall and enjoyed using, well, who didn't, the Carbine in that game, you should feel right at home with the R201. It functions very similar, as it's effective in close, medium, and even out to longer ranges. It's kind of the jack of all trades assault rifle in the game that we got to play with. I'd say it looks like it has a little bit more recoil than its Titanfall 1 counterpart, so it's not as effective out to longer ranges, but it's still quite effective. If you're planning on getting Titanfall 2 or joining in on the Titanfall 2 beta and you've never played Titanfall before, this is the gun I would recommend you use. It's just very easy to utilize and similar to a lot of other guns and other first-person shooters. Get used to this and then venture into the more interesting guns we're going to talk about. Now moving on to the SMGs, another weapon we have returning from Titanfall 1 is the CAR. It's a very user-friendly submachine gun. Does more damage than the Carbine in closer ranges, but doesn't function as well at longer ranges. However, this gun definitely has pretty controllable recoil, and I was able to pick some people off at kind of medium-long range. I actually wasn't a huge fan of the original Titanfall 1 CAR, but Titanfall 2's CAR I did like a little bit more, and definitely did better with it than I did with the original CAR, so it could have gotten a little bit of a buff between the two games. In any event, similar to what I said with the Carbine, this is a very beginner-friendly gun because it's very similar to other guns you would find in traditional shooters. If you like the Carbine but feel like you're in a close-range map and want a gun that's better in close ranges, the CAR should be your go-to. Moving on, we have our first new entry to the Titanfall series with the Alternator, a twin-barrel SMG. Now, this weapon, as you can see, does a lot more damage than the CAR. The problem with this weapon is that it has much lower of a fire rate, and it only has a 20-round magazine. When using this weapon, you certainly had the possibility to absolutely melt enemy players, especially if you threw in a headshot or two. However, it was a very high-skill gun because you had to land your shots because the rate of fire was so low and the magazine was also extremely low. If you kind of sprayed and prayed and didn't really land your shots, you'd find yourself reloading in the middle of a firefight and you'd probably lose at that point. The power potential of this weapon is definitely there, but it does take some mastering to use effectively. Moving on to the light machine guns, we have another returning classic with the Spitfire. This weapon's main draw, its main feature, is an 80-round magazine. That is very good, and that means this weapon is capable of suppression and consistent fire. You can be shooting a target, wander off target, shoot beside him, and then wander right back onto target, and you'll still get that kill without running out of ammo. However, this is kind of the main feature. The drawbacks are that, firstly, it doesn't do a ton of damage. I wouldn't say it does a low damage, but it definitely doesn't do really high damage, and that is combined with not the best rate of fire. So I did find myself getting a decent amount of hit markers, and enemies, at longer ranges would have the chance to just kind of run away. In Titanfall 2, you're capable of pretty fast movement speed, so if you're getting shot, like ding 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 with an LMG from across the map, you're just gonna run away or grapple hook away or whatever. And that is definitely the downside of this weapon. The upside is that there was a couple of other scenarios where with any other weapon I would have gotten caught reloading and probably died. The Spitfire let me just consistently pump out lead and kill the enemies. Moving on, we have a new addition and one of the most unique weapons in Titanfall 2's arsenal, the LStar Rapid Fire Energy LMG. This weapon is unique in several ways. Firstly, it's not shooting traditional bullets, but rather these energy balls. Those balls actually have a travel time, so if you shoot an enemy and then that enemy moves at longer ranges, the bullets are going to miss them as they go by. Secondly, this weapon doesn't really have the traditional reload mechanism most other weapons do. In fact, when you shoot this weapon, the thing about it is that when you stop shooting, it'll do a little cooldown animation, and it does have an overheat function to which if you shoot it way too much, it will overheat and you'll actually have to do a cooldown animation. But again, technically, this weapon will never traditionally reload if you're using it properly, so you can just consistently lay down fire as long as you lay off the trigger and let it cool down every once in a while. This weapon definitely got some taking used to. Once you got used to it though, I found it pretty damn effective. It was capable of killing enemies extremely fast. However, because of its unique properties, it is best in close and medium range, just because you don't want too much travel time for your bullets to actually get to the enemy. Because again, if they're moving from long range, it's very difficult to predict exactly where they're going to be and land your shots. If people aren't moving, however, like I've gotten some pretty hilarious long range kills with stubborn snipers that didn't want to move out of the way of the bullets. Next, we have snipers and a returning classic with the Kraber-AP Sniper. Now, this thing is going to have pretty much the same features as it did in Titanfall 1. Firstly, it is a one-hit kill. From anywhere, at any part of the body, if you hit someone in the toe, it's going to always be a one-hit kill on pilots, which is absolutely insane. Now, to kind of dial back its potential because its power is so high, it does have some features that make it pretty hard to use. Mainly, it has bullet drop-off. Severe bullet drop-off. If you're shooting people from far ways away, you're going to aim at their head and hit them in their toe. And in fact, a lot of the time, you're actually going to have to aim above them. This is kind of similar to what it is in Battlefield, where the guns have bullet drop. If that wasn't enough, you're also going to have an extremely slow rate of fire, and you're also going to have to chamber each round individually. This gun is like bolt action. And it also doesn't have the biggest magazine at only 4, so there's a lot of drawbacks, but again, the positive is that it kills in a single shot no matter what, which is obviously a huge positive. Moving on, we have a new sniper rifle, the D2 Double Take. This thing is going to function pretty similarly to other sniper rifles in other shooters. It's a one-shot headshot kill, which definitely makes it decent at longer ranges. However, you can actually use this weapon also as a DMR, functioning pretty well out to kind of a medium range. Now that's because it has a pretty hefty 12-round magazine, has a decent rate of fire, and can even put on closer range optics. So it's a very versatile weapon. You can use it again at longer ranges or at closer ranges. Now moving on to the shotguns, we have the Mastiff. This weapon was definitely one of the most interesting and most intense guns to use in Titanfall 2. Very, very unique weapon. Essentially, when you shoot this weapon, it shoots out its projectiles in a horizontal line. So obviously you're going to want to be closer to your opponent in order to make more projectiles from that horizontal line hit the same target and then get a one-shot kill, which definitely did happen a lot. However, this weapon's projectiles carry their damage quite a long ways. You're going to be able to snipe people essentially. If they're not moving and not getting behind cover, you can hit multiple shots from your horizontal line and take them down at ranges that shotguns usually don't function to. Now, however, the balancing factor in this is that again you have projectile movement speed. When you shoot your gun, you actually see the projectiles go out, and you're gonna have to account for this. I've missed shots, even close range shots, shots. Because I didn't account for this, I would shoot an enemy directly, they would be moving, and my pellets would just continue to go straight as that enemy moved to the side. So you really have to have a high degree of skill and awareness to use this weapon. If you do, however, it's insanely powerful if you can master it. And lastly, we have a grenade launcher, the EPG-1, Single Fire Direct Energy Propelled Launcher. I really didn't use this thing too much because I didn't really like it that much. Essentially, it shoots a slow-moving energy projectile that explodes when it hits a surface. Because of how slow the projectiles move, you are probably going to want to use this in closer ranges. However, I say that, but the projectiles move perfectly straight, so you can snipe down at a target from any distance. This is going to be a very interesting weapon. We'll have to see if people can master it and use it effectively. Moving on to the secondary weapons, in the pistol category we have the RE45 Auto, a fully automatic pistol, very effective in game modes where you're not going to have to deal with other titans like pilot versus pilot. Moving on to the anti-titan weapons, the first one we have is the LG97 Thunderbolt. This weapon does a decent amount of damage against enemy titans, however it fires its projectile in a ball of electricity that is slow moving, so you will really have to time your shots properly in order to use this gun effectively. It is a good weapon for players, however, who just want to dump damage and then get the hell out of there. There's no charge time, there's no nothing, you just shoot and run away. Moving on, we have the Charge Rifle. This is returning from Titanfall 1 and functions very similarly in Titanfall 2. To utilize this weapon, you're going to have to hold down the trigger. Doing so will charge up the weapon, and once it's fully charged, it will automatically shoot its projectile. The projectile is a laser that shoots out straight, and because of that, this weapon is probably the best of all of these three in being effective against titans at longer ranges. You can snipe titans with this weapon from across the map. And lastly, we have the Mag Launcher, a grenade launcher returning from Titanfall 1. Now in Titanfall 2, this weapon is going to be a 2-round burst, so one press of the trigger will fire 2 rounds from this weapon's 6-round magazine. Each round individually definitely doesn't do as much damage as the other anti-titan weapons in the game. However, you're able to shoot off a lot of rounds in a pretty quick period of time, and therefore its damage output is pretty good. This actually ended up being my favorite anti-titan weapon because it's so easy to use. You're able to dump damage on enemy titans and duck back into cover very quickly, and if you miss, it's not a huge deal because you have a lot more ammunition to spare. Furthermore, when you ambush a titan who isn't paying attention and you're able to dump out all of your rounds, you're going to do substantial damage. Not to mention, this is one of the more effective anti-titan weapons at just normal infantry. If you see a bunch of grunts spawning, you can definitely lay them out with this grenade launcher. Now that is it for all of the weapons available to our particular build of Titanfall 2 multiplayer. Remember that you are going to be able to put on attachments to all of these weapons, including the anti-titan weapons, to have a little bit more variation to them. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something new. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you want to see more Titanfall 2 content in the future, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activities, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at Rickakis. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day. Now, the Cryptarch is just such a huge part of Destiny. He is so associated with the game, both in the positive, like when he gave you your first exotic out of a legendary engram, and the negative, like when he gave you blues out of your other 100 legendary engrams. But either way, he is just so strongly a part of Destiny, and that's why it's kind of sad to see him so heavily fallen from grace, become so essentially useless within the current state of the game.